Thank you all for being here. What a great turnout. This is our first panel discussion that we've had here at the Conrad. We have a wonderful partnership with the Conrad, and really great round of applause, please, for Allison, who's at the La Jolla Music Society and has made this space available to us. I'm the executive director of Solana Center for Environmental Innovation. We're headquartered in the Encinitas area, and we have programming throughout the San Diego County region and actually influence throughout the state in the programming that we do in environmental work. Our vision is a world in which landfills and oceans are free of our discarded resources. Our resources do not belong in the oceans or in our landfills. As an organization, our focus is on soil, water, and waste, and each of the panelists that we have here represent these areas. So land, water, and waste issues, which are key environmental issues. I also want to thank the County of San Diego, which provided some support, and also Patagonia and the Rob Machado Foundation, who donated some items. If the flow is right and I ask some questions and you're the first to answer, I have some a few nice giveaways, a Rob Machado Foundation water bottle and a book from Patagonia. So these are at the front desk, and if I say you're a winner, then you can collect them at the front on the way out. So I'm excited for you to meet our guests. We only have an hour, and we have really wonderful panelists here. And what I'm going to ask is how human impact or climate change has affected their work. And I'm going to go through and ask each of them to introduce themselves and their work and answer a specific prompt. So first we have Ron McCord. He's a chef and regenerative farmer, and he's the owner of Feed the Soil. And the prompt I have for you is, how are farming and cooking connected, especially as it relates to climate change? So first, introduce yourself a little bit more, okay, and the work you do, and then I can reintroduce the question if you need.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Ron McCord. I'm currently living in Vista, and I do a lot of event-type cooking for I work with Patagonia quite a bit. We're actually doing an event this weekend out in Valley Center. So with that, we're always working with people who are producing as locally as possible. And I'm working with a group of people who are producing certain things like avocados and things that produce well in our environment, but trying to figure out how to grow them efficiently so we're using less resources and a lot of the material going back into the soil. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm seeing with just the heat index that we're working with here in North County is that it just is hotter. So therefore you're getting a lot more evaporation. Even with the large amount of rain we got, that is much more than some of the earlier times since I started growing here. I'm having to either water more or provide more mulch to my areas, and I'm seeing that people are getting out of the business because it is a little bit too much to keep things going. And another thing, a lot more of the produce is coming out of different places. So the impact of growing a full crop of something like lemons or avocados and then having not haulers, but the produce houses saying that they can't buy the things because they're getting it for cheaper out of Mexico or some other place. So it is something that we have to start looking at just from a local standpoint.
And I think we'll touch on seasonality a little bit later as well. The other panelists that we have here whose work is related to land, that first of our three pillars, soil, water, and waste, or land, water, and waste, is Circe. She works at Wasserman as an executive vice president. Wasserman is an action and adventure sports talent agency. the prompt I have for you. So tell a little bit about yourself and your work, but then have you experienced changed snow and winter conditions since you began snowboarding?
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for hosting us. I am a former professional snowboarder, so have seen our environment change quite drastically over the last 35 years that I've been active in the space. I think we're seeing a lot of mitigation efforts, snowmaking. It's definitely had like a substantial impact on resorts just in general that are looking to diversify their business because the seasons tend to be getting shorter. If you look at somewhere like New Zealand in the southern hemisphere that already has an ozone issue, their winters now are down to like 5 or 6 weeks if they get one at all. So certainly drastic changes in that regard, and I think we'll continue to see shorter and shorter and more extreme realities in the winter seasons.
Thank you. And next we have Dr. Alba Solsana Berga. I probably have not butchered your name a little bit there. She's assistant project scientist at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. Very fortunate to have her here. Tell a little bit about yourself and the work you do, and then address how human activities are affecting the studies that you do and are affecting marine life.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So I'm a marine scientist, biological oceanographer, and I'm originally from Barcelona, but my work studying marine mammals brought me here in La Jolla, working at Scripps. Then our work, it's based on putting underwater microphones. We put them in the ocean for months at a time across different parts of the ocean. And these allow us to listen to the sounds in the ocean. We can listen to marine mammals, and if you think like, why do we use sound to understand what happens with those animals? Those sounds use sound to do anything in their life. They use sound to find their prey, the food. They use sound to communicate, to navigate, move around the surroundings. So for them, using sound, it's vital. And those instruments, this technology, allow us to study them with minimal impact. So we just passively listen to what's going on around the ocean and allow us to listen to the sounds of different species of marine mammals, but also shrimp, fish, and other species of marine life. But what you're going to notice if you listen to any sounds or recordings from the ocean is that there is a lot of pollution, which is noise pollution. We record a lot of vessels and busy shipping lines that are here. We have some examples like LA. There is a lot of oil and gas exercises. They use air guns to find oil and gas in the seafloor. But then you have a lot of Navy exercises that it's very common here in Southern California. So the oceans right now, they're also facing, apart from climate change, they're also being faced with a huge, overwhelming noise that every decade it's doubling. And this is a serious problem that is equal to plastic and climate change. Yeah.
And speaking of the pollution in the waters, Brian Szymanski is a shaper and surfer, and he's the owner of Ding King. Many of you have probably used his business in Encinitas to fix your board. Brian, after telling a little bit about yourself, can you compare polluted versus clean waters and beaches that you've surfed around the world?
I'll work on that. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Szymanski. I started out traveling quite a bit as a surfer, worked my way into becoming a surfboard repair person, and I've noticed over 40 years the change in the coast. Obviously, everyone's aware of the sand movement and the storms, but also traveling all through Mexico with just the weather patterns that we're experiencing. Different areas collect all the trash. It might not be a place that you would normally go to, probably isn't, and that little sections and coves will never be noticed by anybody, and nothing will ever get done to clean them up, you know? That's kind of what inspired me to like really start looking at it, start talking to people, and try to make the changes that you make turn into habits. So it doesn't really feel like you're doing much different. It's just a habit that just becomes natural. And it seems that as your community evolves to that stage, you see the changes. North County, I mean, our beaches are beautiful. You'll never see trash on our beaches. You know, you go up through LA and you go further north, or you go south into Mexico, and you see a different perspective of what's happening to the coastline. And the whole issue that we're dealing with down at the border with the Tijuana sloughs and stuff like that. But anyhow.
Thank you. And on the waste side, we have Matthew. He's the founder and executive director of Plastic Beach. Tell us what's causing increases in plastic film and bags from your perspective, and where does it go, or what are the dangers of creating plastic packaging and bags?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us. It's a hard truth is that we are the cause of plastic pollution, and we have to accept that. We are consumers. There is the invisibility of plastic is the issue that we have to deal with. All of the clothes that we're wearing arrived at a store wrapped in a plastic bag that the vast majority of us don't even realize was involved in the clothes that we're wearing. This is what our nonprofit is involved in solving. We have found that a typical clothing store will basically produce about 1,000 pounds of plastic bags every year. That's 1,000 pounds that goes to landfill. Look around your local town and city and see how many retail stores you have. Look at a local mall and see how many clothing stores there are in that mall. All of those stores are producing up to 1,000 pounds, and that's not, if you go to one of these mega malls, these outlet malls, they're doing a lot more than that. I can tell you that the Banning Outlet Mall, the Kate Spade there, is doing about 1,000 pounds a month. We actually did a pilot with them last year. They did about 1,200 pounds in 1 month. This plastic needs to be tackled. It's an invisible problem, and that's why Plastic Beach was founded. We have collected and recycled 30 tons of this plastic in the last 3 years, and by tackling it, we're showing that this can be done. And by removing it from landfill, we're removing it from the waste chain, and that chain, let's be clear of this, is it goes to landfill. Even in a well-managed landfill, it breaks down, it particulates, it enters the water table. Once in the water table, it gets into the ocean, and then convection will ensure it makes it into your body. Recent studies have found it's in breast milk, it's in the testes of every male that went through a recent study. It's in us. Once it's in us, the PFAs, the forever chemicals that are part of plastics, they shed and they break down as they give off their chemical structure, and they give off their chemicals into our blood, and that goes in, that crosses the blood-brain barrier, and that causes a myriad of issues. So it's not something that we can ignore. It's something we need to engage, and that's what Plastic Beach is doing.
Thank you, and quite scary.
Eye-opening.
I am going to throw out one of these questions now. One orange in 1920 gave you a certain amount of nutritional value. First person to tell me how many oranges you would have to eat today to get that same nutritional value. Just shout out. Less? Less. More? A little bit more? Okay, whoever said 8 first, there's a prize for you at the front table. Thank you for playing along with me. The question that I have next is a question to each of the panelists to answer. Do you expect climate change and increased human activity to influence your work in your future? Your work or your future? We'll just go down the line. Okay. Thank you.
For sure it will, especially that I'm making a choice to be part of the system. Like, you can't just be a consumer and say you're just going to buy the best or whatever. If I decide that I'm not going to produce anything and I'm just going to go to the high-end Jimbo's or wherever and get my food, I'm still part of the problem and not the solution. So educating people and being able to look at the differences and teach people how to see where climate change or just the climate pattern is adjusting, understanding that certain plants are good for certain environments. Like you go to Home Depot and you buy a tree that needs 300 hours of chill and you only get 100, you're not going to get any fruit. So it has affected me, and it will continue to, engage with it as much as I can.
Thank you.
In my side, I will say at work, when I started doing my research, it was mostly on understanding those pristine creatures. And right now, our work is centered on understanding noise. And a lot of the research we are doing is understanding how this chronic noise, all these different sources that we're introducing, how it's affecting the animals. So there is still a lot to understand of the animals itself and the behaviors, different species that we have no idea are in the deep. So there's so many creatures to understand, but we are mostly focusing now on the noise because it's been a big problem.
And Alba, were you saying before that you're seeing an increase in the shipping lanes, the increase in the noise over time, that presumably will only increase unless there's...
Exactly. Yeah, it's what I was saying, at least it's like when all the plastic is coming all wrapped up, but all this plastic is coming from other sources of the world. It's all coming from vessels that are transported over the ocean. So many parts of our things are being transported with this, and it's gonna exponentially increase. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Do you expect climate change and increased human activity to influence your future or your work?
Yeah, I do actually. The climate change itself, the surfing industry is growing. And with climate change, we get different patterns of surf. And I think our community as a whole, everybody wants to do the right thing with recycling. They want to actively pursue a greener place. And surfers have a large influence, especially in Southern California, on what they do and how it affects the community. And I see the surf community itself feeling like it's something they can do for the next generations. It's something like California's surf industry. Surfboard building kind of started here. Some of the greatest board builders, we are in La Jolla. And this is like the hub of where innovation came from. And something that most people don't realize is, there's new materials being used, but there's also like historical value in a well-built, handmade product. And the surf industry appreciates that, and the customers appreciate that. And so what the people, the surfers of our region are showing people around the world that a board that'll last forever, so to speak, to the next generation, to their kids, the grandkids, regardless of how that product is built, the longevity of it is going to outlive any more recyclable product, And if they're built, the best craftsmen live here, they're built here, stuff doesn't leave here, unless someone comes here and carries it with them back to their home. So I think surf industry has an influence on the world.
And are you seeing the waters and beaches over time have become more polluted, and the change in the coastlines have been degraded more over time? And do you see that progressing, or is there a possibility?
I think the weather patterns of the rain, the pollution has a lot to do with just the rain, and how much it's going through those lagoons that have sediment going really deep, so that's part of the pollution. The sand kind of is interesting to me because as a surfer, sand moving up and down the beach and the sand being pumped to different locations to replenish the beaches. Every bit of that sand gets set out in the water based on how the waves are coming in and from what direction. And so that creates different surf spots and waves that change with these rivers flowing and stuff. So it's a constant change. The one thing that I noticed that actually surprised me, which, I've seen the Cardiff Beach right by the Chart House and everything. I've seen that since the 70s. And there was a huge beach. It was 5 times bigger than it is now. But they did that dune project between the 2 state beaches, and I didn't anticipate that it was actually going to last. And this last El Nino we had was probably one of the bigger ones that we've had, and it did really well. A lot of beach still there. The freeway was fine. The foliage stayed. Birds are coming back. It's nice. I didn't have the confidence in the project, but now I have the confidence in the project. I would support that somewhere else as well.
Super. How about you, Matthew? You want the prompt again? Do you expect climate change and increased human activity to influence your future or your future work?
So I'll address the second part and depress all of you. I want to go back to what I was saying earlier about the landfill. So Southern California especially, we have a huge issue with landfills. There's a thing called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So when our landfills fill, which some of our estimations are 8 to 10 years. So landfills fill when obviously we're putting our trash in them. It sounds obvious, but by putting stuff in them that doesn't need to go in them, and so for our case, that's recyclable products. Also the green bin products, and that's one of the reasons why they weren't going in. One of the main reasons was obviously because they were releasing methane, but also we realized that we could compost them, so that's why they were brought off to their own system for the compost and mulch, etc. Well, the same is true for all the recyclable material. That can be recycled. Now, if it's left to go on to the landfill, it's actually taking up very valuable landfill space. It's taking up very valuable real estate. We need that real estate because if we waste it on, we waste that space that we actually need to put trash that has to go there because there's nowhere else to go. We fill that landfill up too quickly. Once that landfill is full, the NIMBYism is not going to allow us to put another 500-acre landfill anywhere near us. Does anyone know where our local landfill is going to be next? Any ideas? Paula? Does anyone think it's going to be in Southern California? No, it's Nevada. That's our local landfill. Now, how do we think our trash gets to a landfill? Trucks. How are our trucks powered? So basically diesel. So diesel particulates are terrible. The diesel corridors basically are usually through poorer neighborhoods, and they're called cancer corridors. And usually the depots are surrounded by basically poorer neighborhoods and more disadvantaged people live there. You end up with clusters of basically these cancer clusters around them, and then that creates obviously a health burden for the people living there, but it also creates a burden for society and the communities around them. So we have this wider burden and responsibility to recycle, not only for the benefit of the planet, but also for the benefit of the community at large. And here's the kicker. We're going to have to pay to truck all of this material out to Nevada, and then we're going to have to pay to maintain the roads. And that itself is going to have a climate impact because now we're running these diesel trucks out to Nevada. So with all the extra emissions, so we get caught in this ever-increasing amounts of emissions, and it was all our fault because we didn't want to deal with the easier stuff. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than trucking stuff a couple of 100 miles out to Nevada.
Well, isn't this
A cheery group.
a happy panel?
We will get to
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, of course, we're all going to experience, we are experiencing what I would consider probably a human extinction event. It might take us some time. I think that the impact that it has in our everyday lives is a call to action. And I try to find, you know, I've done a lot of personal work because I have young children, to find ways to at least feel like I'm actually doing something, because it's so hard to even know like where you can make an impact. And also we are like in the age of entitlement, right? It's like we want all of our needs met in an instant. And, you know, I think we are all probably byproducts of the American dream, right? And there is an American psyche that requires us to make what I would consider really profound changes. And the more you peel back the onion and the more you discover, you know, even just sitting here for me learning today, how scary and overwhelming it is. But I think that, like, just by example, like for me, I have stopped buying new clothes except for, you know, panties and socks, and starting to buy, mostly vintage or secondhand. How can I carry my own cup now, even at the airport. I'm refilling it, trying to do, I had a plastic cup earlier, which I'm very ashamed of.
Don't have to tell.
I forgot it at home. But, I guess I also feel like there's a lot to be hopeful for, and I think that the more that we can do in our individual lives to have a knowledge and what are the interconnectedness that we have in our everyday lives to make a difference, like, hearing all of this, it's like, okay, like I'm already trying to minimize my output of trash and live in a circular economy as much as I can, whether that's buying from the farm stand down the street, or, sad for me to hear that, Jimbo's, I'm also contributing to the problem because, I think at least there, I'm taking my own bags, I'm buying all organic. But all this to be said, like, yes, it's impacting all of us, and I think we're going to continue to see, really, really profound challenges. But I also think, like, the sand replenishment, like I didn't even know how bad the sand business is until I started to do a little bit of investigating. And it's like, okay, so now I have a totally different perspective on sand replenishment. And yeah, sorry, maybe it's not super great for tourism, or maybe even some of our sandbars might go away. I'm a surfer too. But also like asking, the questions in our community and with our local legislators, like, hey, look, how important is it that we keep funding this? Because this is not sustainable, right? There's all of these like pillars that we've been built on in a society of entitlements. And so how can we deconstruct those a little bit in our everyday lives? So at least I know I'm putting less in the landfill and, buying from the local farm stand, because those are the things that I can teach my children. And at least, I don't know if we're going to reach the tipping point, if we haven't already, on global warming, but also like finding the joy and the beauty in our everyday lives and doing what we can in our work and in our parenting and in our communities that can actually make a difference.
And specifically to the snow sports, do you see that there is a future of...
Probably not. I mean, really,
Yep.
The interesting thing is the storm cycles get more intense. They might be a little bit shorter, but there's still plenty of POW days. All of that being said, like, it's unpredictable, mm-hmm. right? So if you have the resources to hop on and burn a little bit of jet fuel, which, is kind of a bummer, you can, we'll be able to still participate. And they are finding ways, to get moisture. If you see like what Dubai, or Abu Dhabi just was flooded because they finally figured out how to create rain, and they, overestimated the productivity. But, I do have also hope that, like, with, AI or, some of these evolutions of technology, that there are solutions in that, and that hopefully, we're going to still see mass migration. We're still going to see environmental collapse. But we as humans are very resilient, and I think that we will continue to survive, whether it's here or on Mars. But we have to start making big changes in how we live our lives. And I think that it's either going to just happen for us, or we can actually participate. And either way, I try to stay hopeful, because otherwise it's just really, really depressing.
Yeah. I have a question for the audience, another one. By what year will the amount of plastic in our oceans surpass marine life? Just shout out what year you think that might be. MA knows it. 2050. Pick up your prize on the way out.
Wow.
Another fun data point.
We will get to the positive, I believe. I'm going to ask an open-ended question. I know that Ron specifically had an answer for it, and then turn it to anybody else who would like to chime in. Do you have a story that is representative of human or climate change impact on what you do?
Yes. So I moved here in 2012, and I had never grown anything. We went to Africa in 2012, and they had lots of, we went through this forest called the Impenetrable Forest, and it was growing all this food, and there was life, and we saw the gorillas, and it was just amazing. And then as we were driving through towns, everybody had a papaya tree in their front yard, and some kind of farm or something attached to their property. And then I moved here, and I was just super excited about growing, and it's just interesting to see the ebb and flow of what it is to grow, and watching just different aspects of Encinitas was what it was to what it is now, and knowing that was a whole agricultural community, and now it isn't, right? It's shifting, and then you see certain smaller parts, but just watching people lose that desire to tend the land because it's so expensive, and the water. I've seen several farms that they've tried. They've gone, the farm that we're doing a project with this weekend, it started off as a kiwi farm in Valley Center. And then it adjusted to jujubes because they required less water. And at some point, the family couldn't do it. And fortunately, my friend Ed, he took it on with his family, and he's found many, many ways to mitigate the cost of water and the cost of energy to maintain a system. That, I don't know if you guys know what jujubes are, but they're like a Chinese date. You see them in different Chinese medicine and stuff like that, but they're a very interesting little fruit because they don't require a lot of water. They're kind of dry when you eat them. And they can be sweet, a little tart, but they require water. And watching, we actually watched some of the process of the season going over those plants, right? And you can see where the water comes on and where it doesn't, because it's a big hill. And watching what he's done to mitigate that is pretty amazing, just to see he's bringing in horse manure and spreading that all around the trees. And he actually has a spring that runs through his property, and don't tell anybody, but he's using that water to water his plants with just solar. So no grid power to do this, and it makes a huge difference. And to be able to be part of that and see it is inspiring.
And in addition to Ron coming relatively new to farming, he's become a true expert in the community in composting, and which is an opportunity with compost and mulch to retain the moisture in the soil.
Yeah.
He's very creative with a number of the programs that he has implemented. I'll turn it to anybody else if you'd like to share a story that's representative of the impact on what you do, some imagery. I know, Brian, you talked about some beaches and waters in Indonesia.
Indonesia, yeah. well, I was lucky enough to go to Indonesia quite a few times and do some boat trips, which is pretty common for a surfer to go to some outer islands. The one thing that it was shocking, because I had my girls with me, they were really young. There's Uluwatu, which is, you might be familiar with it. Beautiful point, best waves in the world come off the point. The water is like ice blue, dark rock, gorgeous. You know, restaurants all against the hill, it's beautiful. And then you go, and it's a tourist destination, and it's everybody loves to go to Bali for that as a surfer. And then you go down a little bit, and there's Canggu, which is another place that people go to surf. But the beaches are just covered with trash and plastic, like beyond anything I saw. And I'm there with my little girls, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, we're staying in Canggu, and we'll go to Uluwatu. Canggu wasn't worth going to. I mean, the beaches in North County are gorgeous, you know, and we're in Canggu in Indonesia. And it just made me wonder, kind of threw me kind of for a curve. I'm like, well, why is it, you know, we're out here where people wake up at 4:30 and they rake the beaches and they clean everything for the tourists that are coming to Uluwatu. You know, and it just kind of made me feel a little bit like we need to kind of slow down the plastic so that these empty beaches everywhere in the world aren't going to just gather it and never get cleaned. You know, and that's why I like what you're doing. And that's a plastic that I really didn't think about, in all honesty. You know, I thought about the bags and I thought about all the other stuff, but I never really dug deep enough to think about that stuff that when you see 1,000 shirts in a store, that there was a thin plastic bag on every single one of them.
Yeah, that we don't ever see.
Yeah, so anyways, that's my Bali trip.
So I can shock you now because I've got a positive story.
Okay.
So when I approached one of our very iconic surf shops, they were ripe for the picking because they said, oh my God, our staff, which was the sort of, their staff were the younger staff, they were the sort of seasonal staff, so they were the high school seniors. They were taking these bags off the incoming, you know, from these incoming orders, and the distributors, they're playing this game. They stamp all of these bags with the recycling symbol. Some of these wetsuits, they have this big panel, I kid you not. So the wetsuit bag is probably about 4 foot tall. Some of them have a 2-foot panel, and 1 foot of the panel in about 8 languages is this little block telling you to recycle. You know, like a 2-sentence thing telling you to recycle this plastic bag over and over and over in like 8 different languages, and then you get the, like, you know, 3 different ways of telling you to recycle. Well, 2 things about this. First of all, who's the audience? In the US, how do you recycle plastic bag? The grocery store is the only way that you can recycle plastic bag. The second part of this is there actually is a way to recycle plastic bag, but the industry only recycles clear plastic bags. So actually by putting that message on, you've rendered it unrecyclable within the system that there is. Anyway, I was telling you a positive story. So the positive part is these kids were seeing the recycling symbol and they were badgering the management and they were saying, hey, why aren't we recycling these bags? So when I turned up and said, hey, guess what? We can actually recycle these bags. They were like, oh my goodness, yes, let's do this. And they jumped on board. So there is a willingness and a need within certain businesses to do it. The complication is when it comes down to the money, because believe it or not, it does cost money to throw stuff away. Even just to throw stuff away. And with recycling, it's more complicated because there's actually processing involved. Any business has a cost involved, of course, but recycling is a bit more complicated because there's certain packaging and handling that has to take place for it to get packaged in a certain way and downward delivery in a format that the downward recycler wants it delivered. But the good news is that you know, these kids are coming out of our local schools, you know, just like in Indonesia that they're raking the beaches at 4 in the morning. You know, our high school kids are wanting to, you know, to do this. They're wanting this stuff to be recycled. So I think we're in this space now that it can happen. But again, and that's what our nonprofit is all about. We want to be teaching you that, you know, we want to be intersecting this moment where it can happen, and we want to be there saying, and we're here to collect you as you lean into it, saying we want it to happen. We're here to say, okay, we got you. We can now take your hand and we'll lead you into the it will happen part.
That's great.
Hi.
I guess I have plenty of stories, but I think really where I feel the most hopeful is from our youth who are learning about some of the more layered, nuanced aspects of what climate change is and what we need to do in our everyday lives to actually make a difference. There's a lot of really great documentaries that have come out over the last few years that I think there's like an appetite for information. And I am hopeful that the youth are, you know, we always say the youth are going to have to save themselves, I guess. But that there is an interest, even but using California as an example, like has passed legislation that is requiring like new packaging requirements. And when you've got California where you have to abide by these new regulations, you're going to see like a retooling of packaging from a lot of, you know, if it's the 6th, 7th largest economy in the world, inevitably companies are going to have to retool. I work with a group pretty closely, a New Earth Project, which is an aspect of Atlantic Packaging, which is one of the largest packaging groups in North America. And they are like really driving innovation, and whether it's like from developing biodegradable plastics, not from corn, because there's problems with corn, especially, you know, GMO'd corn that's grown, you know, at scale in a monocrop, but like actually really starting to take in, you know, like, you know, where are these byproducts of waste that we can then put into a more circular system. And I think we are going to solve some of those disconnects. I don't know how quickly, but I know that I deal and work with young people all the time, and they're the ones that are really starting to demand, you know, from their partners or from the brands that they work with or whatever, like asking questions like, well, what are you guys doing about this? And then we have great examples like Patagonia, who, you know, are really leading the charge in sustainability and upcycling, and even like Brian here at Thinking, where, you know, it's like just being more precious about the things that already exist. And I really see that even with my own kids. My oldest daughter is getting her master's with a focus on the intersection of sustainability and business. And I think a lot of that change can really happen when it's business-oriented solutions, where we're able to do things at scale that are better for the world and also create efficiencies in supply chain or all of those things. So I didn't share a particular story, but that's kind of what came up for me.
I think we have a lot of hope in our youth, and I worry, you know, you hear about climate anxiety with youth, but when they feel empowered, I think there's a lot that they can do, and that's come up in a number of the comments here. I'm going to ask another question, and then to the audience, and then a final question to our panelists. So which do you think creates more greenhouse gases when it's landfilled? Food waste or plastics? Oh, you all get prizes. Check at the front, and we do have a lot of water bottles. So 62% of Americans feel responsibility to do something about climate change, but 50% of them don't know what to do. And I think a lot of us feel that. I feel responsible, and I'm really not sure what I can do. So I'm going to turn it to each panelist to share what is the one most significant action that the population in general or audience members can take to reduce their negative impact on soil, water, and waste. And then I'm going to turn it to you all to ask questions of our panelists. So, Ron, what's the one action, the one most important, significant thing people could do tomorrow?
Is plant a tree, like plant something that's going to cover the earth. If you notice, anytime you leave bare earth or undisturbed earth, something tries to grow there. And a lot of times we want to weed whack it down or something like that. But I notice that when I walk in my yard, it's cooler than when I walk off my property, because most of my land is covered with something. And if it isn't, I'm looking at it thinking, where and how can I cover it with something else? So plant a tree.
Mine will be, you're wondering like how you can help with noise pollution. And if you think that all of the things that you're using on your daily basis, your clothes, your food, furniture, your cars, a lot of this is transported with vessels. So one action I will say that people in their daily life they can do is think of like how many packages you're going to order this week from Amazon. Can you reduce it to just one a month or even less? Can you buy more like secondhand clothes? Really just reduce the amount of material that you're buying. Yeah, so that will be my thought.
And specifically when we talked, I think you really homed in on buying local.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I just was talking in the news not so long ago that they said Whole Foods had food produced from China. It just means that this food was produced in China and transported here through the ocean. So just think of like if you can buy something that is locally made, you're already cutting up all of these constant things. It's plastic, noise pollution, chemical pollution. There's so much that it's a chain behind. And then obviously all the oil and gas that I can talk more about it.
Thank you.
I think everybody knows the different things that we've all started to do to help the environment. I just think picking something that's natural to you, create a habit, and share that habit with the people around you. You know, that way you forget about it. It's like everybody does everything constantly. They always have these rituals that they do. You'll forget about it. You'll just naturally do it. It'll better the environment. And if you share it with people, they'll think it's clever or they'll come up with their own. And I just think it's a good idea.
That's great.
Mine is that we don't really have a recycling issue. We have a collection issue. So just know your footprint, especially with like plastic. Own it. Be realistic. So even if you don't see the plastic, it's yours. So you have a lot of power. So if you're in a store and you like it, have a conversation with them. Say, look, I like your clothes. I know there's plastic associated with it. You took it off before I bought it. Where does it go? It's important to me. Get it recycled. But own it. Don't tell people, hey, I brought my own plastic bag or I bought a reusable bag. I don't have plastic in my life, when you know it's not true. So, but own it. It's uncomfortable, but we have to own it.
I would say two things. One is simple things like stop buying single-use drinking vessels. Start using refill stations. Like think about, just be more conscious like every time that you make a purchase that is part of the problem. Just be conscious about it, because the minute that you do that, you start minimizing your impact. I think the other thing is like being very conscious about where you are buying things. I think inevitably there's a wealth disparity. Like I have the privilege of being greener or making very conscious purchasing decisions. That's probably for everyone here today, you have that option. And so just being much more considerate about how and where you're buying things. And, like you said, I think, asking those questions, demanding, a reduction of waste from the places and the businesses that you consume from. Because I would say by and large, they're pretty responsive to customer feedback, right? If you're asking and demanding that, the more that we do that, the more I think we'll start to see a little bit more effort at accountability.
I forgot to share my habit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so when I go to the coffee shop, you used to be able to bring your own cup. A lot of places don't want you to bring your own cup. They use paper cups. I'm okay with that. I don't need a lid. I just don't need the lid. I mean, I don't know why you just get a lid for your, I mean, you're just going to start drinking it instantly anyways. So I don't get a lid. I just do the paper cup.
Like
So there you have it.
I like that. So I'm hearing themes of consumption, reducing our consumption. I'm hearing youth being, part of our future and looking for youth to do more. And I heard a little bit of technology solutions from Cersei, buying local as well. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I think we collectively as a community need to do something because it is a community problem. I'll come back again at the end, but I would like to hear what questions you all have. Yes?
Thanks, everybody, for all your efforts for doing it, and thanks for your moderation. You're doing a great job. My name's John, and we have abatement issues, clean up our mess. We have educational issues that let people. You're doing a great job of letting people know what we need to do, and then there's behavior change, and what are the things that cause us to change behavior? There's so many studies that say, the world can be collapsing all around us, but we're gonna say, but we're okay here, but we're not okay here. It's an illusion that we live in. The town next door can be wiped out, and we'll say, well, they were in Tornado Alley, and we're not, until it happens to us. How do we? I don't know if that's an answerable question.
I'll take it first and then see what our panelists say, because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Behavior change is a big issue that we work on at Solana Center, trying to impact soil, water, and waste issues. The biggest things are convenience and ease, which are pretty tied into each other. So, for example, when you want to implement a curbside food waste collection program, it's got to be easy for people to do, and there's got to be no confusion at all, and it's got to be convenient. So we have problems with the green curbside bins where there's sort of the ick factor, right? People aren't used to sorting out their food waste. So what Solana Center as an organization now is working to identify ways to keep the kitchen caddy clean, to figure out what kind of paper bags you can line your kitchen caddy with so that the trash can doesn't get dirty. It's a very good question. Behavior change, I believe, is at the root of it. How is it that we have become so wedded to single-use disposable water bottles that are used for seconds, and then their utility is gone? And it's harmful to us, so how do we get that message across to people? Anybody else want to tackle behavior change?
It's cultural, no, as well. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, very much.
Very much.
Do you want to talk a little bit about so you've spent time in Europe and
Well,
in
I
Barcelona?
grew up there and grew up in a tiny town of 1,000 people, so I had a lot of the experience of what is a community, of people caring about each other. You walk on the street and everyone say hi, and you have hi and bye at the same time. So for me, it was interesting then moving here and see how there's so many possibilities here. We have so many resources and the sources to make it happen, but we are missing a community, and even for me coming here, I was in Spain, I wasn't using that much single-use plastic, and I came here and it's you go to a coffee shop and it's immediately you have a plastic use. So it's so deep into the culture, and that's where it has to change.
She mentioned the word community, and I say this to a lot of my friends and even to you all, I guess. Community to me is eating together, right? If you're sharing in your food system, then you're taking stock of what it is. Do you care about it, right? Do you care that our food system is coming from South America, or do you care that it's coming from community roots around the corner? And how are we supporting each other in those things and breaking bread together and making those practices kind of as zero emissions and zero impact on the system or making it better. So for me, I compost everything that comes through my kitchen. And when my friends are doing things and they're throwing things away, I tell them, hey, like, you can recycle that. And there's ways to do it, and let's figure that out, because it gets better, right? My soil, when I first moved on my property, I couldn't dig into it with a pickaxe. And I was a little worried. I'm like, oh man, did we move on the wrong place? But as I started to integrate that organic matter, now I stick a stick in the ground and it starts to grow. I can't do that around the corner at my buddy's farm. So,
Ron, would you say like farmers markets, or like for us, what is your suggested local resource?
Knowing that you're part of whatever, if it's your farmer's market, but even then, I go to the farmer's market in Vista, and the first thing I ask is, where do you guys grow? And they're like, oh, we're in Northern California. We come down for the week, and they sell. And what I'm saying is, as that something is being produced locally, then there's some energy around it, and it is reciprocal. So it's going back and forth, and it means something when you know where your food is coming from, right? It means something to you, or to me at least, when I say, wow, I just harvested 5 pounds of mushrooms this morning from my friend's farm, and I'm gonna go and prepare them for 30 people tomorrow. So that's what I mean.
Other questions? We have about 5 minutes left. Yes.
For Matthew, I didn't quite understand what you're saying about recycling that plastic. So great, that's the message. Where? I mean, all I know is I have a blue can. Mm-hmm. And I can bring my bag back to the grocery store, but that's just to reuse it. They don't help recycle anything. So can you please elaborate?
That's a good point. So the only system in the US is for recycling these bags is through the grocery stores. The grocery stores are mandated by law that if they sell you a plastic bag, they have to provide a stream for you to bring that plastic bag back. If they don't provide you a bag, they have they don't have to give you that resource, which is why a lot of stores don't have that bin for you to drop off that bag. If you type in plastic bag, ABC News, or whatever, you'll come up with a lot of articles now where they're finding that these bags are turning up in landfill in Indonesia. They were dropping these air tags in them, and they were turning up in incinerators, landfills. It's not a robust system. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart. If you, on Earth Day, you'll never see a poster over one of these bins saying, we've recycled X thousands of pounds of plastic bags from this location. It's an opaque system. If you ask any of them at any of these Walmarts where these things go, you'll never get an answer. And talk about the blue bins, if you look on the EDCO, Republic, Waste Management, all of those systems, they will all tell you, do not put a plastic bag in our bins. Their stated reason is they use a conveyor belt system that the bags will go into the wheels and they will block up the system. This is in a country where we will happily sell you a $1,200 iPhone, but we rely on a Flintstone method of recycling. That's it. And people say, well, why are we stuck at 6% of recycling? Because we're the Flintstones. Yeah, that's the reality. So basically, we've chosen to basically partition this whole stream because we don't want to take on that extra complexity. So there is a mechanism to get it recycled. There's a company called Trex. It's an American company. They make decking from this material. It's called downcycling. Downcycling is when you basically reduce the complexity. So what we do is we just do the collection of the plastic bags, and then we send it to Trex, where they shred it and they mix it in with wood pulp, and they make this composite decking, and then you can buy it at Home Depot. The value of that for us is it sequesters that recycled plastic, and then it sits outside someone's house for the next 20 to 30 years as a downcycled piece of plastic, and it's locked out of the waste system for the next 30 years, which is basically the gold standard, isn't it?
So you're saying, for me to recycle, I call you.
We are modeling a wide-scale engagement. We've been in business for 5 years. We have a 5-year plan to be out of business. We are making a commitment to our community that by 2030, EDCO will have put us out of business. Our commitment is that EDCO, Republic Services and Waste Management, will be offering this service to you by 2030. And that's why we're here today, because we want you to be demanding this from your city by 2030. And that's what we're doing. We are basically building this ground level education with you and with the businesses. We're building this model up with the businesses, so we're providing businesses with the ability to recycle. So we're already working with about 35 businesses from national. We just signed on our first international business yesterday.
Congratulations.
We're basically, we're already running a pilot program for residential drop-off. So we're building out a base of knowledge, of engagement. We've got paying customers. We're building out the actual process through down to Trex. So the idea is, and we're talking to Senator Blakespear's office, to other local and city level and EDCO and Republic, and we're communicating to everybody involved, this is our plan. And that's what we want you to know, because this is what we're aiming for. We're signaling this to you right now, and this is our pathway. So we want you to support us on this journey, and we want to signal this is where we're going, and we want your help to get there.
And if you have plastics tomorrow, you can bring them up to Solana Center. We've got a drop-off, plastic beach drop-off there. So got a community drop-off there. We're out of time for more questions, but if the panelists are willing, you can come up and talk to us afterwards. You know, we really want a world where no one takes too much, right? We want a world in which we all share, and I'm building off of something that Cersei said about we're quite fortunate, the people in this room, for the most part. We can make the choices, but it's not equitable. We're hearing about the beaches in Indonesia, where we have pristine beaches here for the most part. So I'm going to just wrap up by saying, I encourage you to support Solana Center's work. I was very fortunate to be able to partner with the La Jolla Music Society here today. The County of San Diego has supported our work, and as I mentioned, Rob Machado Foundation and Patagonia. We highlighted, in this discussion, the harm that human activity has on the natural environment through the soil, water, and waste issues, and our staff work really hard to make the possible practical. So I encourage you, if you're interested, come stop at our table that we have out there, learn a little bit more about what we do at Solana Center, talk to our panelists. We have a QR code if you're able to make a donation. And that's it. I thank you very much. If you are one of the winners for the questions, please stop at the desk at the front. We have a few giveaways. So thank you.
Thank you.